Hello and welcome to Neverwinter with Aragon. So you may have heard that the Bard Songblade will be getting some updates, and this is getting prioritized ahead of the Ranger Warden, so just be aware of that. We finally have some changes that have been implemented to the preview server, with essentially some powers getting double their magnitudes, a performance rework, and also some bug fixes. Again, this is just wave 1, and we can cover all the changes that they've done here. You can jump on the preview server for yourself and do some testing, but I've done some and I'll show my data here and kind of give a reference how it stands versus other classes with these changes. Now, before we jump into all the Bard business, I just want to touch on again the Wizard and the nerfs that they're getting, particularly Critical Conflagration. Stripped away the 10% crit severity. We'll have to rework our builds, but there's something behind the scenes that makes it even worse. There's a bug. I don't know whether they'll ever fix it, but if you use Rhymefire Weaving, you can no longer get any smolder damage. What will happen if you use this power is, so long as you attack your target, your smolder will deal 0 damage because you keep refreshing the duration of smolder and it gets no chance to actually trigger, and it deals 0 damage. You can see it over 3-minute test, 0 smolder at all. I'm using Critical Conflagration here. Okay, we got 1 hit there. Excellent. The only time you will get smolder damage is when you deal some damage, you trigger it, and then you stop dealing damage. So you stop triggering smolder on the target, and then it will deal damage. But as soon as you go ahead and refresh the duration of the smolder on the target, it stops dealing any damage because you're just continually refreshing it. So that's a big reduction in damage if you were to accidentally use this with Rhymefire Weaving when this update goes live. What you want to do then is just not have that power, switch it out, and at the start of a fight you want to have like Scorching Blast, and so when you do go and attack your target, you'll trigger smolder on them just with that, and so long as you attack, you will continually have smolder on your target, so it'll keep dealing damage then. And yeah, you avoid that bug and you basically gain all that Rhymefire smolder there, which is like 11% of our damage. You see a massive difference there. So don't get caught up in that. But I am reporting it. Hopefully they will fix that bug, but keep your eyes open and keep yourself updated if there's any fix. But if that patch goes live, I will of course have patch notes and stuff, and I'll give you a heads up whether to switch this out or not for your single target builds while using Rhymefire Weaving. You can of course just stick with Directed Flames and use Critical Conflagration. Overall you will have less damage, but your Rhymefire Smolder won't have any trouble triggering there and just dealing damage as normal as it did. So let's jump back to Bard and all the updates coming and that we can see particularly on the preview server and test. So first of all, here we can see what Brett Norton's plan is. He's the executive producer for Neverwinter, so he's the one giving us all the updates. Their first wave is going to be just fixing various powers, giving some buffs and that performance regen rework. And then they also want to look after that at mystifying strikes and some other issues in a future wave. Now we can see their goal with these updates, like adjusting these encounter powers, then these at-will powers, and the performance regeneration, and adjusting performance based off Divine Muse, the item power. Now we get into the actual details of that. This is the full performance changes that they want to be covering. I'll go over that a bit more detail myself and a bit more clear. But first of all, we jump into the actual number crunching changes. So we see here with the encounters, Lunge being changed to become a charge power, so each charge will have 9 seconds. Whenever you get an improvised version, you'll gain a single charge, and there's been a slight animation delay added on the hit to sync better with the charge attacks. So you see that in game here, we have the lunge, no change to its damage or anything, but yeah, I'm not a big fan of this one. You can't see then the cooldowns on it either, and you can't reduce that cooldown with like tacticians or anything either. Now Dancing Light's got its magnitude increased to 1000 and its cooldown drastically reduced down to 14. But moving on, the Reprise at will just got a little bit of a magnitude increase to 40, a bit pointless. And then the Flesh at will, the magnitude of the final hit is gone to 240. And the tooltip will identify this as enhanced magnitude. We see that here, and that's basically, I guess, to compensate for the really long cast time that third hit has when your character just spins around. I still don't think it's all that great compared to just staccato, because you'll be using that to trigger Ballad of the Hero a lot more. But then the Con Elemento at will. They've adjusted all of them, and to be honest, I don't really like it. Basically what happens now is when you use those, you're locked into casting them. So you can no longer like jump or move. You're locked in for the full cast time. Now they did say they would adjust them. So right now the cast time's like 1 second and 1.1 second on all of them. But they did say they would change them down to 0.8 seconds. So that would help a little bit. And with Con Brio, they did make the range a little bit further up to 25 feet, as we see here from just 21. And they did adjust the screen shake. Now, in terms of the actual damage of them, you can see Con Brio is still 180, Con Motto is still 150, and your Con Fugio is still 160. Just you are really locked into casting them now. You can't move at all until it's fully finished casting, which I did object against. So they will reduce the cast time. But then going into more encounter powers, the Contrae encounter power will no longer hit twice when playing an elemental song. They rebalanced all the magnitudes. Contrae Seconde will now have a knockdown instead of a knockback. And Contra Septine will have the added knockback, and Contra Nervim will have basically its charge time reduced down to just 2 seconds. Basically, I think it just makes the power a lot better within multi-target content, since you aren't going to be knocking around the enemies. And the magnitude has been adjusted basically to compensate for them not hitting twice anymore. So you will see it having like magnitude 500 here, up to a magnitude of basically 1200 on single target and 900 on multi-target. And the whole cast time is a lot lower. But then ad libitum. This will also no longer hit twice with an elemental song. I've rebalanced all the magnitudes. What they've done is increase the magnitude double. So it's now 800 per hit rather than 400. It's actually pretty huge. And they did say they fixed the double hitting, but we can see some more changes here with the Vault Stupito encounter power. It will also no longer hit twice with elemental songs. They rebalanced the magnitude, they say, so now it has 300 rather than 200. The problem with that is because it was 200 magnitude and hitting twice, so it was 400 magnitude basically. Now it's only 300 magnitude, so they basically nerfed it and made it so that it's not really useful to cast the improvised version versus just an at-will, so that's a bit questionable. They did change the Ballad of the Witch. The finale will have a much shorter cast time. That'll be good within multi-target. And then performance regeneration. They changed it from just 8.5 per tick to 20 per tick. This is massive. Basically, yeah, you can gain your songs back 3 times faster than you normally would. And this puts it similar to how it was when we were using the Dark Maiden's mythic headpiece that gave us the regen, or the new boots giving us the regen. Basically, when we used those, we were gaining an insane amount of performance regen, which was bugged. But now they're changing our base regen to basically be that. And then you no longer need the item. They have changed the items here, you can see, so that they're properly 10 or 20%. So there will be very small bonuses now. But they have then changed Musician's Flow. So rather than it being like a 50-50 that it would reduce the cost of your song that you cast down to half, they've just changed it so that it's going to give you some extra performance regen. Although the thing was that this feature was applying to you anyway, regardless if you had it slotted or not. So it's a bit of a nerf in that regard. But still, having the base performance regen get massively increased to what it is now means you will see a significant improvement and basically have the same effect as if you had before, like those regen boots or the regen helmet. So now you cannot use those. You can just use stats instead and it will be pretty good. We can see I did my analysis on that performance regen, and basically your base regen with that, can be casting a song every 15 seconds. So that's pretty good. You're already right there being able to make sure you cast Ballad of the Hero all the time. It's a 20-second duration. If you're getting your song every 15 seconds, you can always maintain that then, right? And then they did change Musician's Flow, so if you have that plus your base, you can cast a song every 12 seconds. Now, if you do want to use Divine Muse with, let's say, the 20% regen from the boots or the helmet, you can see you could get your cast time down to 12.5 seconds. Again, this is without Musician's Flow, just the base and Divine Muse, 12.5 seconds. However, you only get performance every 3 seconds, so 12.5 seconds is greater than 12 seconds. You would have to wait until 15 seconds to be able to cast a song with 100 performance. And then you can stack your base, regen, Musician's Flow, and Divine Muse. You'll end up with 10.4 seconds. But again, since you only get performance every 3 seconds, you'd have to wait until the 12 seconds. So it's kind of pointless to have a Divine Muse bonus. It's not that beneficial. You're better off just going with stats, which is good. It's a bit of a damage improvement then, because you can use those to get your 90s. Your rotation still fits pretty well. You will have, let's say, a 6-second wait time between casting, let's say, Tailwind Mambo before you can cast, let's say, Ballad again. You can cut that down to just a 3-second time if you were to use, let's say, the arms to give you extra maximum performance. So you'd be at 175, meaning you only need to regenerate 25 before you can cast a song. And you should be able to do that within 1 tick, which is 3 seconds, if you had, let's say, Musician's Flow. If you didn't have Musician's Flow, then you have to wait 6 seconds. So you can maintain Tailwind Mambo and Ballad of the Hero very readily with these performance changes. Moving on, there are some things they still want to look at. Reworking Mystifying Strikes, change Redoublement, Flourish, and look at the overall DPS balance. That has still got to all be done. Now, I did go and do a test myself over 5 minutes of just using encounter powers and keeping the songs up. So Tailwind Mambo, and then also Ballad of the Hero. And you can see what we're looking at here. Over 600,000 encounter DPS with just songs and encounters is quite a lot. I have not reached that on any of my tests on the other classes yet. On a build that basically gets all 90%. We can see that here, we're in combat, we use all of our powers, play our ballad. I generally just use it from quick play to avoid the delay. But yeah, we pretty much get all 90%. It's just missing like 1.5, 1.6% on accuracy and combat advantage. So that's pretty close. And we're still getting an absolute ton of damage on the Bard. But yeah, again, balancing needs to be done. That's not something they've really looked at. They're just making adjustments to put it in more of a reasonable state. Like, I was using Mystify there. It was dealing 7% of my damage. But as soon as you have more allies to attack the target, because only my companion is triggering this, as soon as you have more allies, Mystify just racks up to crazy amounts. So they will be reworking it. And I would assume they'll probably change it that it can only trigger once, rather than multiple times. You have 10 guys triggering this, and you basically have 4,000 magnitude. 20 guys, 8,000 magnitude. 30 guys, yeah, 12,000. This power gets stupidly broken when you have lots of entities attacking your target. In like a trial, everybody with Mirage, that's 5 guys including a companion from just each player. 9 other players, that's 45 guys. Each of them triggers 400 magnitude, and yeah, that's 18,000 magnitude on one class feature. Yeah, that's why Bard is so broken, and you do use it in speedruns, but it also makes it so unreliable and terrible to balance. You can't balance a class around a feature which is so dependent on what your group is. If you have a group where they don't use Mirage, they don't use a striker companion, they don't hit very often like an arbiter or a fighter, slow attacks, then you're going to end up having this power deal very little damage, and thus you can't have the class performing overall badly because this is performing badly. See what I mean? So that's why they need to change this. They need to rework it, make it a more reliable source, regardless of what players you're running with. And then, yeah, just have it so that you don't have such a massive effective range where you can perform sometimes really poorly and sometimes really overpowered, depending on your chance, because this is also only a 5% chance to trigger. Whether that gets in the artifact call, whether it doesn't, can change your damage drastically. And it was dealing upwards 30, 40, 50% of your damage. Is a bit nuts. Ultimately, again, this is just the first pass on Bard Songblade changes. I don't know if just this first pass alone will be going to live. If they do, it's a bit broken and overpowered. They certainly need to do some rebalancing and fix some bugs, because Bard is riddled with bugs, particularly Songblade, with regards to their songs causing effects, double hits, like improvised versions as well, things not working the way they say they do, and yeah, we'll see what happens and who knows. But my opinions on this is it's going to take a lot of effort to balance it properly, and if the devs don't have the time for that, it's either going to be overpowered or very underwhelming. With that said, a massive thank you to all of these channel members for their added support. I want to see you guys around. Goodbye for now.